Hey Exeteers, thanks again for stopping by. My name is Riley and I'm a former Jehovah's Witness. And today I have a guest on the show. Her name is Linda, and she has a really interesting story to tell. So thanks, Linda, for joining me today.
Thanks, Riley, and thank you very much for inviting me.
You're most welcome.
Thank
So
you.
please tell us how you became involved with Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah, in 1975, my father, who suffered depression, had a breakdown, and he felt the necessary thing to be doing was be putting us into the care system so that we'd be taken care of, and we'd have a roof over our heads. So in the early part of the summer, I was placed into the care system temporarily. And then in September of 1975, the local authority, Lambeth in London, felt it okay to place me with a so-called Christian family. And they didn't have any idea as to what the Jehovah's Witnesses or the cult was known about back in the day. So they felt it okay to take an individual who was born into an Irish Catholic background family and place them into a JW family. And it was a back then foster family. Jehovah's Witness foster family, and that's how I came to have knowledge about the cult, and I was only 6 at the time in 1975.
Right, wow. So essentially you became a Jehovah's Witness at the age of 6.
Yeah.
Through your foster parents.
Yeah.
Right. And do you have any memory of what your religious beliefs or practices were before then?
I know that I did attend church, obviously being Catholic and being baptised a Catholic and going to Ireland and to Dublin and being baptised, or christened I should say, back in the day. I had an idea that my father was fairly religious, but he'd obviously fallen by the wayside because it was his depression. So there wasn't a lot of religion come up to the age of 6. I think it was basically a case of, well, the local authority, Lambeth, felt that it was necessary to place me somewhere. So the next best thing would be to place this child in the care of a so-called Christian family.
Right, I see. And obviously Jehovah's Witnesses are quite well known for not celebrating holidays like Christmas and Easter, or celebrating birthdays. Do you actually remember celebrating those when you were with your father?
I do. I remember having Christmas and birthdays with my dad. I remember having other celebrations throughout the year, Easter obviously in particular, and I think there might have been a couple of occasions with Halloween as well, with dressing up. And of course that all stopped, because once you enter the life of a JW, that's it. There's no more celebrations, and birthdays are very much, nobody is allowed to celebrate birthdays either.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, how did you cope with that change? What was it like for you?
I think it was a gradual change. I didn't find it very difficult to begin with, but I think as time went on, as I was getting older, because that was for the first 4 years until I was 10, and then my back then JW foster mother was disfellowshipped, and so we left for 5 years, and then she decided at 15 it was time to actually introduce me again to the cult. She said that you as children needed structure, and I want to go back to the Jehovah's Witnesses, but she'd have been disfellowshipped twice, so she was having to get herself reinstated. We were having to sit at the back of the hall, and it was very difficult because people would obviously come and talk to myself and to other family members, but they wouldn't necessarily interact with her. So at 15, I'd literally had one date with my sweetheart at school, and I wasn't allowed to see him again. And of course we didn't have communication back then as we do today with social media, no mobiles, and even to use a phone you had to ask permission. So we did the one date together, and that was the end of it. So back to the cult I went. So I was groomed from the age of 15 until I got married at the age of 25.
Wow. So a lot of ups and downs and back and forth in terms of your religious upbringing. With your foster mother being disfellowshipped.
Yeah, and then there was also the case of my sexual abuse that I unfortunately had to endure at the hands of my perpetrator, who was also living alongside me. I can't go into too much detail, but Lambeth, the local authority that placed me back then in the JW foster family, realised that mistakes were made, so they admitted liability to my case, and I'm a member of Shirley Oaks Survivors Association, which is based in London. And they admitted liability in 2016, so I won my case. And in 2019, I was awarded a substantial amount as a payout, which was to compensate, but it can never do or undo the childhood that was taken from me at such an early age.
I'm so sorry to hear that you went through all of that.
Yeah, it's pretty horrific. Yeah.
But also, I'm pleased to see that you've come through it all with such a strong and positive attitude.
the thing is, you can't let it beat you, because if you do, then that's it. And unfortunately, so many ExJWs don't always make it the right way, or they end up having to be medicated. But I've never had to have medication, or I've never had to go into rehab or anything, or to be rehabilitated in any shape or form. I've never taken drugs. Obviously medicinal, yes, I've had to over the counter. I've never been a heavy drinker. So I think from my point of view, maybe being a little while, I was protected from a lot of that around me, but it was after I left, decided to go it alone and no longer be with a foster family, because I was adopted a month 18. So all those years that, I've got 4 files all about my case and everything, and a month off of 18, I was eventually adopted into the family. So that was quite something as well, because my natural father fought for years not to have me placed into a family regularly, or into a family that was going to be a full-time situation. He only wanted a temporary arrangement because of what he was going through himself at the time.
Right. So was his plan to, at some point, to come back into your life?
Yes. And to take me out again, and to be a part of his life again, very much so. But unfortunately, he went to the north of England, and then he remarried and resettled and had more children. So that was quite difficult, because I had to realise that I was no longer just his daughter. I then had other siblings around me as well. Yeah.
Wow. So you mentioned that you were married. Did you marry another Jehovah's Witness?
Unfortunately, yes. I was with him almost 25 years. I ended up being in a domestic violent relationship. I tried to flee 3 times, and then I was coerced the 3rd time back. And my mental health and my childhood horrific sexual past was used against me, that they would take me to the Crown Court in London. They would take my mental health into consideration. I would be sectioned, and that both my children would be taken from me. So I stupidly went back in 2012 without realising that I could really have got away with both my girls at the time. And then I ended up staying for the last 7-8 years and being shunned as well, which again is barbaric, because it's a mental torment toward the individual. So I was shunned for 7 to 8 years, because a shunning is a practice that Jehovah's Witnesses use. If you don't perform, if you don't fall into line, then if you speak out about things, then we'll end up treating you in this way so that you stay quiet. And I'd had enough of it by then, and I had to see the doctor quite often and talk to different people about how I was coping with everything. So in the end, I decided in 2017 I'd had enough. I went to the GP, she signposted me. I then went to a domestic violence forum. I spoke at the forum, and I went to these meetings. Instead of going on the door-to-door work, I was actually at a meeting once a week to try and get strong. And then it took 7 to 8 months before I actually plucked up the courage. And both my youngest daughter and I fled 7 months later, in April of 2018. So it's almost 3 years now. Yeah, but I had to leave the eldest behind because she's been conditioned. That's another thing they do, is parent alienation. And that's something that really gets to me even now, because it's a crime against people to keep a child from a caring parent that just wants the best for them. So she's 18 now. She's going to be 19 in July. I've not seen her since she was 15.
That's terrible.
So I like to speak out about it. I like to let people know that please don't get involved with Jehovah's Witnesses, because they aren't for family. They pull families apart.
And is your daughter, is she still very much an indoctrinated witness? No,
the strange thing about it, my violent ex, he decided to dissociate himself, which is something that they can do. They can excommunicate themselves. So he did this a few months after I left, so that he could then go online and do an online divorce and use my mental health against me. So without my knowledge, he divorced me in July of 2019. That was just over a year after I left him. And then he got remarried in January of 2020. So it's all very, hang on a minute, how can somebody divorce somebody without their knowledge? But he managed to get away with it. So now I'm battling the financial side of the property that we own together, because he felt that I'd walked, that I wasn't entitled to it, but my solicitors told me different. Yeah.
Wow, it's terrible. And you don't have any contact at all with your daughter?
The only way that we do contact is the fact that I send her birthday and Christmas cards. She does put on social media that her mum doesn't recognise or has anything to do with her, which isn't completely true. Yes, okay, we haven't spoken verbally since April the 30th to 18, but I do send birthday and Christmas cards, and she's got my email address. So I'm hoping at some point, you know, when she gets older, she'll realise that I had to do. It was either go on my own, or it was either not go at all, or it was either go with one and leave the other, and it was most difficult to decide to do at that time.
Yeah. I can't even imagine what kind of situation you were in. You know,
Well, I know
like
lots of ex-JWs, both male and female, that had to leave children behind, family members behind, and they've all suffered because of it. And sometimes the agencies haven't worked with them. My social worker, in the end, I did actually tell her to F off in the end, because she just was not being cooperative. The day that I was trying to flee, she wouldn't allow me a travel warrant for my youngest daughter. So in the end, I managed to get the money together, so I was able to travel with her, 13 bags and an 11-year-old in tow, and 2 train journeys to get where we were going. And yet I still didn't get the support. And then we ended up in a women's refuge for 2.5 to 3 months, and then we went into a tent for 3 weeks. The social services were saying they were going to send her back to her abusive father, and I said no. So I took the tent for 3 weeks. We had a 12th birthday in a tent, and then we eventually got into a shared accommodation, which wasn't ideal because there was no running water, no proper electricity. Broadband kept breaking down, so it was very difficult for her at the time. And then in February 2000, and eventually February 2000 and was it 19? Yeah, 2019 February, we were rehomed into a 2-bed brand new purpose-built apartment. So yeah, it was really good. Yeah.
Oh, you've really been through it. You've really been
It wasn't my first experience in a women's refuge, because when my father was coming out of an abusive relationship with my natural mother, that's how he ended up having the care of me. We ended up into a women's hostel in the 70s with a child on your own and no job prospects. It was very difficult. So I'd already had that part of my life anyway as a youngster, but I don't remember it at all.
Wow. So at this point, you left the organization, you left your abusive marriage. But what were your thoughts about the actual religion? Did you still believe it was the truth?
No, I've got very little thought about it. It's damaged, and the wrecking of relationships. It's a cult. It's a corporation. It's a business. It's nothing to make anybody feel good or happy about themselves. It's just out to cause harm. You know, it's detrimental. Yeah. It needs to have its charity status removed as well, which is something that I spoke about at the Truth Project in 2020, and I spoke about it at the independent inquiry regarding my case as well. I said about the cult, the known as Jehovah's Witnesses, need to have their charity status removed, because that's something that we're all really hoping for, because they don't deserve that title. They don't deserve to even have that about them.
Yeah, I completely agree. Agree. So if you had to put it down to one thing, what was the one thing that made you realize that this was not God's one true religion?
I think it's the fact that they allowed for the shunning, and the fact that I told that I had to stay with an abuser despite him having 3 affairs against me, one with a prostitute from Bulgaria, and the fact that he was arrested 3 times, that the authorities weren't listening. The elders were telling me that I had to listen to the 2-witness rule regarding my own sexual abuse as a child. And it was just the whole thing about it. And I just felt that all of it was not wholesome. It was unhealthy. And it was doing more detrimental harm to my mental health than ever. And I needed to get out and I needed to flee. Because if I hadn't, who's to say what would have happened to my youngest daughter, who's now thriving? She's 15 this year. You know, she's now got prospects. She's now got a life ahead of her. And I'm pleased that my eldest isn't a JW, but at least they both weren't baptized, you know, into the religion as well. And it's not even a religion, Riley. You know, there's nothing religious about it. It's man-made. You know, even during this pandemic at the moment, we're all suffering, we're all trying to get through. They're all still making, because they're writing letters to corporations, to businesses, and to individuals. And it's so wrong, because people are suffering and they don't need that on their doorsteps. They really don't.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I completely agree with you about it not being a religion. I mean, I sometimes refer to it as a religion if I'm speaking to someone who who's never been a Jehovah's Witness, just to make it easy for them to understand. But I hate referring to it as a religion, because it really isn't.
There's no shape or form about it. It just doesn't have an appeal about it. You know, I was 6. I was dragged into it. until the age of 10. I was dragged back into it from the age of 15 onward until I was groomed and obviously got married into it. I pioneered and so on. I managed to do a lot of traveling because of my pioneering. Yes, I saw parts of the world that a lot of people weren't able to. Yes, I got an education because my adopted father was not a JW, so he wanted me to have further education. So I was able to then still pioneer as a result of it for the 8 years that I did. But on the other hand, the expectations that could have been, you know, of ourselves, what we could have had, what we would have been, what we could have been. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And it took the identity from me. It took my identity because I was born into an Irish Catholic background family. And whether I wanted to continue as an Irish, you know, Catholic individual was my right, but I had my identity taken from me. And that's what the JW cult does. That's what the Jehovah's Witnesses do. They take your identity from you. You no longer are an individual. You're just classed as a statistic. And that's basically what it is. Numbers.
Yeah.
Number.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I mean, I can resonate. What you said resonates a lot with me because I found it very, very difficult to be a Jehovah's Witness because when you're part of a high control group like that, they try to impose an identity on you. They try to impose a personality on you. And that's something that really goes against the very core of who I am. I value my individuality. And I felt that was being stifled.
Yeah. I'd very much like to know a bit more about my Irish roots. I know it's not just the Irish side, but I've got Spanish side of my mother's side as well. So I'm very sort of cosmopolitan. I'm very Mediterranean in my outlook. But I'd like to know, I mean, a lot of my cousins that were on my parents' side that were not JWs, that were not put into foster care or into the care system, were able to learn Irish dancing. They were able to learn the Irish way. And it's just little things like that, little things that make an individual as to who they are, as to who they should be.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's thanks for sharing all of that. I mean, you've really been through a lot. And so how we first connected on Twitter was you made a post about being reunited with your childhood sweetheart after 30 plus years.
38 years.
Yeah, and wow, that's there's an amazing story behind that.
Huge.
So you tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, we were at high school together. Obviously, back in the day, it was secondary school, and he'd only been at the school a 3 years just prior because he'd been somewhere else before. His name's Kurt, by the way, and we'd gone on this date. He kind of looked across at me and had obviously seen me in a few subjects that we were taking together, and I didn't really have any idea what was happening, and he just happened to ask me out on a date. So I was picked up by his parents and himself, and then I was taken back to his grandparents' place, and then we went for a walk along the beach because we both loved the coast together. And then we decided that we were going to have a video, and then we obviously had a meal, you know, with his mum and dad at the time, and we watched a video together, and you know, we had a really good fun time. And then I got back to school, and Kurt had already hurt his arm when he was younger. He'd broken his arm, unfortunately. I think he'd fallen off a tree or something, and he really hurt his arm, so he had to have an operation. I had no idea. And there were these girls in the class who I didn't really know an awful lot about. They were twins, and they were kind of, a lot of people knew them, but I didn't sort of have a lot to do with them. And they basically turned around and said to him that I didn't want to see him anymore. But that wasn't the case. They actually told him something that was untrue. And he'd obviously been off school because of his arm. He was also having problems at school with bullying and so forth, as I was, well, being back in a JW setting. So we lost contact. He left school early, although he was older than me. He was a year down from what he should have been, so he was able to leave class early. So he went on to college, and obviously I left school and I went to college. And then eventually, obviously, our paths went separate ways. He then formed a relationship, had children with his ex, and obviously I did the same with mine. And I just went onto an ex-school Facebook page, like you do. You know, you get back into contact with people. So I was not allowed to have social media with my ex-abusive husband. He wouldn't allow me to have social media. He wanted to keep me away from everything because that's what they do. Because the narcissistics are very clever at doing that coercive behaviour.
Yeah.
And I went onto this group, and I was added by a couple of friends from school that I went to school with. And I just happened to put a photo of myself out. And the next thing, there's this comment, and it's Kurt. Oh my God, I've done something wrong. He couldn't believe it was my picture. So then he just private messaged me on Messenger, on Facebook. And I got a bit scared, a bit worried, because obviously I'd come out of a relationship and what I'd been going through, and I wasn't quite sure. So I went quiet. But he basically messaged to say that he was there, you know, he was here to talk to me if I needed him to talk about, or for me to talk to him about anything. He would be there for me. And it wasn't until the early early of 2019 that I decided to message him again. And I messaged him at his works Christmas do, which is always held in the January. So he was there with one of his sons who had no idea what was going on. And we were messaging each other whilst he was at this dinner dance thing he'd gone to every year at work. And then we kind of got chatting. And then by the April of 2019, we saw each other for the first time. And we're talking 36, I mean, it's 38 years now, so it's about 36 years later. So, the teen years have gone. You're out of your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, you've hit your 50s. Wow. And the two of you have had children, and he's also a grandfather himself, so he's got a little granddaughter as well, and a grandson. And it's like, wow, he's got a ready-made family. And obviously I've got, my two daughters. So he arrived. And that was in the April, and obviously we were getting really close to each other because he was coming to stay overnight and then visit him as often as he was able to. And in September of 2019, he moved in. Yeah.
Wow.
So it'll be this April. Yeah, but so this
after
April.
36 years.
Yeah, after 36 years. So we worked it out. We calculated. We've been together. Well, obviously we were parted. In total, it would have been 38 years. So we've had our 1 year anniversary already. So that was September, being together. We've lived together, and it's going well. It's not, as the cult says, it's nothing untoward. It's all very healthy, and he's very domesticated, and he was a chef when he was younger, so he's really good into cooking and that. And he's just lovely to have around. He shows me what love's all about and what a relationship is really meant to be. And there's nothing narcissistic about it. There's nothing I'm a man type thing and you're the woman and you're under me. There's none of the weaker vessel, as women are often taught about in the JDubs. So all of that to a side, he's just, I'm smitten with him. Yeah. So I've just gone public this week, the last day or two, and I've just told my friends on Facebook that I'm actually in a relationship now with him. And a lot of people said, oh well, it's pretty obvious anyway. Just putting it out there, really. Yeah.
Really lovely. That's really lovely. So Kurt is the guy that you went on one date with when you were
one date when we were teenagers. Yeah. I mean, he's gone through a lot. He's obviously got things he's dealing with and he's battling with at the moment. His children aren't fully on board with what's gone on, but they are all grown up now, and they need to take stock and understand that their dad also has to have happiness. It's important, that he's given to everybody. So now it's his time to also get back as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting that you mentioned, like, you contrasted your relationship with Kurt now to your marriage with a Jehovah's Witness. And you kind of preempted my next question, because I was actually going to ask you what would you say the differences are, but that they really are. It's really like night and day, isn't it?
Yeah, you're undervalued. You're not given value as a woman. You're the underdog. You're the lowest of low. And if you're being shunned or excommunicated, or if you're being marked in any way, shape or form, if you've spoken out, then you're blacklisted as well. So you don't really have a role. You don't really have a position. When I first got with my ex, I was a regular pioneer for 8 years, and I think a lot of it, they like to marry young. I mean, I was 25, so I thought 25 was a good enough age, but I look back now and I think I was probably a bit too young, really. But a lot of them are married at 18, 19, and they have trophies on their arms. It's like, that's all it's about. It's just having a trophy. In fact, I was talking to somebody on Facebook the other day about what it was like when you go to an assembly, like a cattle market. It's like everybody's looking for everybody. Who's absolutely. The next Mrs. to be, or who's the next Mr. to be type thing. And that's basically what it is, isn't it? That's what they do. Yeah. I
mean, life as a young Jehovah's Witness, you're so repressed in every conceivable way.
Yeah.
And whenever there's any kind of opportunity for interaction with the opposite sex, it's just like it can go crazy,
Yeah. It's free for all, isn't it? And if you've had a damaged childhood through a trauma, whether it's sexual abuse or physical abuse, emotional and so forth, then it can be a bit more hard hitting. People don't fully understand, they don't fully grasp what's actually gone on. So, you've got to be a bit more mindful about it. But my ex used to use my mental health and my past against me all the time, to the point where he would almost dangle my children in front of me so that I would be made to shut up, be quiet, and do as he was telling me, and the rest of his family as well, and of course the elders.
That's terrible. That's terrible. So you touched on some like activism work that you do now to like try and raise awareness about could you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, I like to be quite vocal. I'm on quite a few, several ExJW Facebook pages. I tell people out in public, you know, not to go anywhere near. Obviously, I've spoken to the Truth Project about what went on and what happened with me, and obviously, I've spoken to the Independent Inquiry. I'm really good friends with a journalist at the Guardian newspaper, so often I'll send her an article or two across, and she's heard my story. And because my perpetrator was never brought to justice, it's a bit difficult with my story. That's why I've got to be a bit careful. But on the other hand, if she could do it anonymously for me, she will do at some point. What I was hoping for more than anything with Lambeth admitting liability with my case was for them to actually say, well, we should never have placed you in the JW cult, because if we hadn't done that, you wouldn't have ended up being damaged as you had been. So if they were to admit to that, I would then have a case that could then go forward, and then it would open the door for a lot of individuals to be able to bring cases forward as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Fantastic. I mean, one thing that I think a lot of former witnesses are quite frustrated about is that, excuse me, is that the world in general doesn't see the witnesses for the destructive group that they are. They just see them as being, okay, they're some kind of like fringe Christian group with like a few strange quirks, but by and large they're nice people. And individual witnesses, I mean, there are a lot of nice people in the witnesses, but the group itself, the way it's led and the practices are very, very harmful and destructive. And it's frustrating that people don't realize that by and large.
Well, I also put on Twitter the other day, I've just recently purchased this book about cults and abusive relationships, how to, you know, better yourself, to sort of look at yourself as an individual. And I wanted to purchase the publication because it's been all over social media recently. So I managed to purchase a copy recently, and I got it within a couple of days of getting it through Amazon. And it highlights in there, it even talks about Koresh, it even talks about Waco and that. And it's like, wow, you know, hang on a minute. It's to the point where, I mean, I know about several ExJWs who unfortunately have lost loved ones through death, and that they've taken their lives because of mental health and because of suicidal thoughts. And yet they don't seem to have any care or thought about anybody like that. If you've got some form of depression or mental, you know, illness about you or mental issues, they'd rather it was hushed up. Or no, you don't go and see therapists, you don't go and talk to anybody about it, because the paradise is going to do it, because Jehovah's going to do it. It's like, I don't want to hear about the paradise. You know, I've been hearing about this paradise since 1975. Do you mind? What good has it done me anyway? It hasn't. Yeah,
exactly. You know, that was one of the things that I found really difficult to deal with once I woke up. It's like, now I have to worry about the state of the world, because I can't rely on that thing, oh, Jehovah's going to come in and fix everything. You know, you no longer have that to fall back on. So it's like, I have to care about stuff that's going on. I have to care about what I see in the news. I can't just put it in the back of my mind and say, oh, Jehovah will sort it out.
Do you think it's like a reprogramming as well? You have to almost reprogram your whole thinking, your whole way of life in order to fit in with, or in order to go alongside with. I mean, I had an amazing event a few months ago. I was actually able to vote for the first time. I mean, Jehovah's Witnesses not even allowed to vote. So the whole adult life without voting was like a huge thing. So I told Kurt about it, and he took me to the local balloting. We took our little slip of paper and we went to the place where we had to cast our vote. I was like, wow, you know, I've actually managed to vote. But the only downside about it was that I didn't get to do the Brexit thing. Yeah, but never mind. I've done something of nothing. Yeah.
And what does Kurt think about your whole JW background? What does he think about that?
Well, what does Kurt think about it? Yeah, he does raise an eyebrow or two. He just says it's an absolute wacky, and the whole thing is it's disruptive, like you've said. It's very damaging to the individual, and what they've done as well is just absolutely, it's just ripped people apart. Here he is.
Hiya.
Hey there.
Personally, I think they don't just destroy the lives of the people that are in the cult. I'm sorry, I'm going to call it a cult, because as far as I'm concerned, it is a cult. It's not a religion. It's a company.
It's definitely not a religion.
It's a company, because everything about them is money. That's all they're doing. It's money, 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 and that is not a religion. No religion generates itself in over 100 years. I'm sorry, it's not. You don't pick and choose what you want and say, oh, well, that's now my religion. That's no basis case, and so it's not. It's a cult. And my opinion is that it doesn't just ruin the lives of the people that are in there. but anyone that those people that they touched lives, like Linda touched my life. Yes, it was only for one day, but that impacted her. Being stopped from seeing me impacted my life for the next 36 years.
Wow.
Stopping
so did
me
you often think about Linda? I'm sorry to interrupt.
Sorry.
Did you often think about Linda during that time?
I was looking for her the whole time.
Oh, wow.
The whole time.
Oh, no, that's so sad.
There was once, I think I saw her once. She was in, I was doing carpet fitting with my dad, and we'd popped into a local pub. This was probably, I would probably have been about 19, probably about 18, 19 years of age. And we popped into a pub, which was near where Linda used to live, just for a drink. And I mean, I don't know if it was, I saw a girl sitting at the other side of the room, but with two guys on either side of her in suits. And I think it was Linda. I looked at her and I was like, I want to go and talk, but I didn't know who these people were. And I wasn't 100% sure if it was her. So I didn't. But, you know, when social media, you know, every time I used to drive past where her house was, I'd always look at the house to see if I saw anyone coming in or out. You know, whenever I was wandering around Worthing area, I was always looking at people. When social media first came out, so originally it was, wasn't Facebook, was it MySpace?
Yeah.
I think it was MySpace. So again, I would always put her name in the searches to see if her name came up. Then when obviously Twitter and Facebook and all those things came up, I was always putting her name in the search every so often just to see if anything came back. And I'd look at the pictures, and if it matched that it was around about the right age and roughly the right area of the country, then I'd go in and see if I could match her to any links to see if that was her. Because obviously we both age, so you don't always know what that person's going to look like.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the whole time that social media was around, I would always go on there every so often, just checking, just see if I could see her. And then, let's say one day, and then I joined the Chatsmore, which was our school. They had a reunion page, and I went on there. And again, she wasn't on there. But again, I'd go on every so often, and then once I went on there and saw this picture and saw the name, and that was it.
You went, oh my God.
So you must have been doing backflips when you finally saw her post on Facebook.
I just couldn't believe it was her.
Wow.
And you know, my initial was I just wanted to know that she was happy.
Yeah.
I wouldn't, you know, if she was happy and in a happy relationship, I would have just said, I'm really happy that you're there, and if you ever want to talk, I'm here. But to find out, you know, what happened, get the story, and then, you know, it's just, I need to get back together with her.
We're still battling now, aren't we?
Yeah.
At the moment with the ex and that.
So yeah,
that is such a touching story. It really is. And can I ask, what challenges, from your perspective, what challenges has there been that have touched your relationship as a result of Linda's past as a witness?
Well, obviously the initial ones with her obviously being stopped from seeing me. Obviously, it was kind of like a two-prong attack, really. Obviously, I was being told at school by people that she didn't want to see me anymore, which Linda didn't know about. But in the other aspect, Linda was being told by her foster parents that she wasn't allowed to go out with me anymore. So it's like a two-prong attack to stop us being together. You know, if I'd have known that what those people were saying was a lie, I wouldn't have let her foster parents stop me from seeing her. I would have used every opportunity to have seen her whenever possible.
Yeah.
Obviously, but I didn't know about that. All I knew was they had said, you know, she doesn't want to see you anymore. So I was like, okay. It was, you know, and it did. I mean, I've told Linda before, it broke my heart. You know, you hear people say love at first sight.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
It was. There was nothing. It was 100%. And Linda has never left my thoughts all these years. There hasn't been.
Amazing.
You know, there hasn't been a week that's gone past where it hasn't has thought of her. I mean, the date that we went on, I could tell you blow for blow every point of that date now, 38 years later, and I could tell you everything that we did, where we did
and
it,
the video,
how we walked,
the
film we watched as well. I could tell you everything. But obviously, the cult still has effects on Linda even now, which obviously affects the relationship, because there are still things that she struggles with.
Living together, but I'm getting used to it
living
now.
together. I mean, you know, every concept of it. You know, she struggles on a Sunday laying in, having a lay-in on a Sunday. She's always wary of the cart. If the cart, obviously, it's lovely, it's not around, but you know, the cart's around, it puts her on edge and stuff like that. She's still worried about.
I've walked the cart out though on a couple of occasions. I've actually told them where to go, and I've walked them out of the town.
You know, we'll go for a drive in certain areas, and she'll be worried because it might be in areas that she did her door knocking on. So she's conscious of other JWs around and worried that they're going to see her and how they're going to affect. So obviously, all these things do affect and do put a strain on a relationship, because because I'm worried for Linda. You know, it doesn't bother me. I couldn't care less. Anyone comes up and has anything to do with me, I'll deal with them. Not a problem with that. But it's how Linda, because of how they're shunning and how they're disfellowshipping, seems to have this control. I mean, it's difficult for me because obviously, not being a JW, I don't really understand it. I know it. I know the concept of it. But without being in that, I can't understand how that can actually affect you. I mean, if someone said to me, I mean, I was Roman Catholic, and then when I got married, I then became, I joined Baptist. It was a kind of, my ex-partner kind of forced me into becoming a Baptist. So I did it just for, you know, peace and quiet. But if they turned around to me, which they have done, and said, well, we want nothing to do with you, I'd go, okay. You know, but, you know, JW, the way they work is completely different, because they're constantly kind of pushing it into your head that it makes it so much like it's like your end of your life. And you know, to see that those effects on Linda, I find really difficult to understand. I try to understand, but I still find it difficult, and it's still even now it's still a threat for her.
Completely. I mean, well, your love for her is obvious. You know, 36 years.
A gentle giant, because he's 6 foot, I'm only 5 foot, so it's quite a height difference. But
wow. And I'm so pleased for you, Linda, that you have, you know, such a loving and supportive partner who's.
I know, it's incredible. I have to pinch myself, you know, is it really happening? Is it still, it's like I often say to Kurt, I don't want to lose you, I just don't want to be without you. And I think part of that is because we've already gone through so much trauma, you know, we've already gone through so much in our lives, and as part of the cult thing, isn't it? If you don't want to do something or don't want to be something, then you just leave it to the so-called paradise to sort of deal with it for you. But we can't now, because we're in the real world, and this is it.
Exactly.
It's nothing to be frightened of. It's exciting. There's so many interesting things ahead, so many doors to be opened.
Absolutely. Well, I'm so pleased that, you know, you're finally living your life on your own terms, and that you know you're in a loving relationship with a man who's loved you practically all his life.
It's quite something, isn't it?
It's quite something. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me. Thoroughly enjoyed it, Riley. Appreciate that.
You're welcome. Thank you. And I just wish you all the best in the future. I just wish you that, you know, that you continue thriving and growing outside of this oppressive organization.
Absolutely. And I'm having my second official birthday tomorrow as well.
Oh, excellent. Well, happy birthday for tomorrow. I mean, by the time this video goes live, we would have passed, but happy birthday. What was it like celebrating your first birthday?
Oh, that was fun. That was really good. Yeah, that was fun, because believe it or not, that was quite something, because we didn't have lockdown either. We didn't have the virus, because we didn't have the lockdown until the March of last year. So I was able to, you know, have my first birthday in that respect. So Kurt took me for a meal. It was lovely, a nice little romantic meal, and then we had, you know, the rest of the day together. And obviously, oh yes, that's right. I've got some interesting gifts along the way as well. I've had some amazing gifts, some jewelry, and that I've had some jewelry with I've got some earrings at the Tree of Life, and the jewelry of it's just amazing. It's just sort of like, you know, something that I'd never expect. I had to do like a kind of a treasure hunt type thing of trying to work these codes out as to one of the gifts that he bought me for my first birthday.
Oh wow, that sounds like fun.
Wow, you know, just to think that he puts all that thought into it. Whereas to have gone without a birthday since I was 15, it's like, wow, hang on, you know, what's gone on?
Have you ever seen the film The Da Vinci Code?
Yes, I have.
Well, then you'll recognise this.
This is really clever.
I'll get into it.
Oh, right. I see. So was that part of the treasure hunt then?
Yeah, so you had to get all the letters.
Yeah.
Locations, and it's spelled "I love you."
Oh, that's so sweet.
And then inside that, when she pulled it open, was a promise ring.
Oh, that is so nice.
Promise ring. There we are.
Oh.
Just a bit different, isn't it? It's not your everyday thing that you can just sort of not even know that it's going to actually happen. It's like, wow, you know, trying to work all these things out. A couple of the areas were in the immediate area that we live in here. Some of them were further afield, so I had to walk to different places and that. And then eventually we got to the mill, and then it was at the mill that it was eventually revealed what it was inside the capsule.
Oh, that is so lovely. That is so nice. I mean, when the first birthday that I celebrated, that was my 43rd birthday, and I cried several times during that day, because you know what it's like as a witness. You're not allowed to celebrate yourself. You're not allowed to feel proud for your accomplishments. You're not allowed to, you know, self-care is looked down upon. So to have one day where people just celebrate you and show that they love you and show that they appreciate you, it's such a touching thing. It's huge. It
is. I mean, in fact, my daughter, my youngest that lives with us, who's 15 in July, she finds it difficult because she's never known what a birthday is about, but this will be her 3rd birthday this year. She much prefers Christmas because it's for everybody. So she's kind of getting used to the idea of her birthday. But her first birthday, as I say, was spent in a tent for her 12th birthday. And that was an interesting birthday.
Yeah.
It was warm. It was very warm in 2019. So that was just as well, really. Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. Yeah, it's such an extreme view. You know, I mean, it is possible to strike a balance between thinking about other people and thinking about yourself, but they present the extreme view that thinking about yourself in any way is completely selfish, utterly wrong, which is just it's nonsense, really. I
mean, it's your day of your birth. It's a special day. It's the day you're actually born, isn't it? It's the day what you are about. This is as a result of coming about, you know. So I mean, my eldest daughter does do birthdays, obviously, and Christmases, because we see it all over social media because she's very public with it. So, and she actually did put one of her social medias on TikTok. She put out that she'd been kept from everything for the first 14 years of her life. She was having things that she was doing things she didn't want to be doing. So she was telling people, you know, exactly what she thought as well, which is good that she's being vocal about it.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Oh, that's so nice, so nice.
Thank you so much, Riley. Appreciate that. Yeah.
You're welcome. Right. Thank you.
I'll see you soon. Take care.
And you.
Okay.
So,
bye.
Thanks, Jigsaw for watching. If you haven't already done so, please like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching to the very end of the video. If you haven't already done so, please leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. If you like my work and want to help me continue doing it, please support me on Patreon at patreon.com/Jexit_2020. And with that, I'd like to sincerely thank these very special patrons who make these videos possible.